Some of you might remember Hendy Performance asking you to send in questions for me to answer. Well, here they are, and here come the answers. James Henley, the racing driver that's supported by Hendy Performance in his motorsport in Formula 4. He wants to know, am I going to race this year, and how did your racing career start? But it started when I won a Lotus in a magazine competition 50 years ago now. Am I going to race this year? Well, yes, I may well be racing that same Lotus, which I now own again. But also I'm doing other historic racing, the TVR Tuscan, a McLaren M1B, a Ford Capri, and various other historic cars owned by very generous Mr. John Spears. Ken Batchelor wants to know, have I ever considered or been asked to drive a land speed record car like Thrust or Bloodhound? You've got to be joking. They're crazy, them guys. I'm much happier in a Model T Ford. That won't go too fast. Trevor Wilcox wants to know, who influenced me to get into racing when I was younger? It was my dad. My dad used to go to Brooklands before the Second World War. He was a huge spectator fan. He took me to Goodwood as soon as I could walk, and I clung to the fences watching Mike Hawthorne and Sterling Moss, my great hero Jim Clark, flash by. So it was my dad. Travelling Fox wants to know, what is your best ever driver's car for pure unadulterated fun? He talks about F40s, Caterhams, yeah, both good choices. Would love to know what it is. Well, for me, it has to be rear-wheel drive. So we're talking anything from the McLaren F1 to BMW M4s, M3s, Porsche 911s, or how about a 700 horsepower Mustang? Now that will be fun. Tricky one, this. J2W73 wants to know, what is the best hot hatch for the aspirant driver today? Well, hot hatches, there are so many to choose from, but maybe follow the World Rally Championship, where you've got a Toyota Yaris or a Hyundai i30, of course the Ford Fiesta, so they're all good starters for 10, but you could look at a Renault Megane and all sorts of Golfs and things. But then really, at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to beat a Ford Focus RS. The 3 Cylinders wants to know, if I could drive only one make of car for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? Well, Ferrari, because it's a Ferrari. Kyolan Martin, apologies for the pronunciation of Kyolan with an accent, favourite Formula 1 livery of all time. Well, I remember an old-fashioned bloke, and I still do hark back to Jim Clark and his pre-sponsorship Lotus, green with a yellow stripe down the middle. Or if you go for a sponsored logo, then you can't beat the black and gold John Player Special. Karun Arya says, what is your favourite experience behind the wheel of a road car? You've guessed it right anyway. You know, it's the McLaren F1. Awesome. Oh, Dan the Man wants to know the scariest drive I've ever experienced. Well, it's not actually in a car or on a racetrack. So I always felt I'm in control, whatever speed I'm doing in a car. But trying to drive a 5,000 horsepower dragster, now that scared me, yeah, that bad. Stuart Hassler wants to know, have I ever owned a Ford? Well, several actually, starting with a very tatty Ford Anglia van, followed by 2 equally tatty transit vans that towed my racing car around Britain in the early 70s. And then later on, very smart Ford Capri, bright orange, not very new, not as smart as this Brooklands edition either, but it did have a brown vinyl roof. Alexandru, what is my opinion on GT3 cars replacing the old DTM machines? This Mercedes wing reminds me of those. I think it's brilliant. I think DTM got too high-tech, too scientific, like so many racing formula. The GT racing is brilliant the world over. All the different models are balanced, it's much more down to the driver, so I think that's a very good thing. Henry Kravitz wants to know what the best, worst car that I've ever owned. Rather embarrassingly, I haven't owned that many cars. Over the years, I've been very fortunate to be loaned cars when I was racing for manufacturers or being ambassador for manufacturers. Cars I've actually owned myself has to be my little BMW 323i back in all the late 1970s. Funny enough, exactly like the one that Chris Harris's dad drove him around in, if you watch that program called Top Gear.
worst car, I'll go on to one that I was loaned by a manufacturer there, which when I was doing some product launching for Citroën, my company car for the year was an XM, which was a bizarre thing which collapsed when all its hydraulics failed one day. Has been the best car I've ever driven permanently. George Nicholson wants to know, what car would you choose that you can use daily and suits every requirement? Well, how about a Jaguar XF Sport Brake, the car I am driving now, and it is what I would choose. I love estate cars, whatever manufacturer calls it different names. I'm not an SUV man. This puts all the kids in the back, all the clobber you want, the golf clubs. Perfect.
Ian Love wants to know if I have a favourite racing car. Of course I do. It's a Lotus, not this one, the little red and white Lotus 69F that I won in a magazine competition 50 years ago and bought back about 6 years ago. I still race it occasionally, but it is and forever will be my favourite racing car. Ian Blair, money no object, what car would you buy from any era? It would be my favourite ever supercar, a McLaren F1. Oh, awesome. Mark Safe Hands McManus wants to know what is my best driving achievement. It has to be standing on the podium at Le Mans, having finished third there back in 1990 in a Porsche 962, beaten only by the two factory Silk Cut Jaguars. R55 who? What is your favourite Ford model? A Cosy, of course. Dr. Julius Strangepork. Tiff, if you were handed the delicious sausage sandwich, red sauce, brown sauce or no sauce? Oh, no sauce, obviously.